Prologue. This is a story of interfering gods, brave warriors, and battles. A story of vengeance, heroic deeds, and the power of a beautiful woman. A story of blood on the ground below the vaulting towers of Troy and in the sand beside the curved, crimson-proud ships of Greece. It was a time when the gods took sides and meddled in the fate of mortals. The Greeks had brought war to Troy and besieged the city for 9 long years. Why have they come here in their thousands? Helen, more beautiful than the moon, has been stolen from her husband, Menelaus, king of Sparta, by Paris, prince of Troy. Led by their high king, Agamemnon, a cruel and greedy man, the Greeks fight to win Helen back. The Trojans refuse to let her return. Each side has its heroes, of course. The Greeks have Achilles, fiery-tempered and a fierce fighter. Prince Hector, the Trojan champion, is a great warrior and more generous than his rival. The cause of their struggle began many years before. The story begins. Achilles' father, Peleus, was a mortal, and his mother, the sea goddess Thetis. Thetis knew if she bathed her son in the waters of the river Styx, which mortals cross when they die, he would be safe from earthly harm. She took her baby, held him by his heels over the dark, raging waters, and dipped him into the cold river. Was he protected? We shall see. At the end of our story, Achilles is a grown man, runs faster than a gazelle, and is brave as a fighter as an angry bear. Achilles of the bright armor led more than 2,000 wolf-wild warriors, riding the wave path in 50 ships. They have come to the Trojan shores out of the southern seas around Greece for vengeance. So who is to blame for all of this? Paris would say it's nothing to do with him. He would refuse to accept the blame for stealing another man's wife. Paris could not resist the lovely Helen, nor she him. He would claim it was the work of the gods. Fate brought Helen to Troy, as fate brings the Greeks to rot in their huts in the black, proud boats along our shores. You can't blame me, he'd say. The promise of Aphrodite is the promise of a god. I was bound to do as she foretold. But Paris was sometimes a petulant, selfish man. Was this his fault? We shall see. The meddling gods. Before his birth it was foretold that Paris would be the ruin of Troy. His father, Priam, king of Troy, ordered his herdsman, Achilles, to kill the newborn baby. But the old man, afraid of the gods' anger if he did what Priam ordered, secretly brought the child up in the mountains. Only if he and the gods knew Paris was the son of Priam. How did this young man herding longhorn cattle on the soft mountain slopes come to be promised Helen by a goddess? It hardly seems likely. But it's true. The gods had interfered even before Paris was born. Invitations to the marriage of Thetis, mother of Achilles, to her mortal husband Peleus, had not included the goddess Eros. Eros was a troublemaker. She decided that the mischief she made would echo down through time. During the wedding celebrations, Eros threw a golden apple at the feet of the guests. On it were engraved the words, "For the fairest." 3 of the guests, the goddess Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, were vain enough to claim the apple. Zeus knew what trouble there would be on Mount Olympus if he or one of the other gods were to decide who was the fairest. He ordered the handsome Paris, a mortal, should choose. Hermes, Zeus's messenger, found Paris herding cattle. The goddess stood up with their faces covered. It was cold this high up on the mountain. Zeus ordered, "You two choose who is the fairest," said Hermes. "I don't think so," said Paris, shaking his head. "It's not my place to decide. I'd rather not." Paris knew whatever he said would vex the losers. Then he smiled and took the golden apple. "I'll divide it into 3 and give them each a piece." "Paris, that won't do," Hermes insisted. Reluctantly, Paris walked up the slope toward the goddesses. "Please," he begged, "I didn't choose to do this. What can a man do when ordered by Zeus?" The goddesses turned towards him. Paris shielded his eyes from their blazing loveliness. "One at a time, please. I'm blinded by the 3 of you together." Hera was first. She came close and whispered, "Give me the prize, and I will make you the lord of Asia and the richest man alive." Paris said nothing. He looked away. Athena was next. She stood looking him directly in the eye as, high over the dark crags, an eagle soared into the endless blue sky. "If I win, I will bring you victory in all your battles. I'll make you the wisest and most handsome man in the world." Paris shrugged. I don't need to win battle. I'm a herdsman. I don't need bribes to make fair judgment. Now, is Aphrodite ready? Aphrodite stood on the soft green grass. The mild summer wind whispered around her. She leaned closer to the youth. Paris, a man as handsome as you won't waste life on these mountains. You will marry Helen of Sparta, who is almost as beautiful as I am. Helen, daughter of Zeus, and as lovely as a swan, is yours. Aphrodite shamelessly moved closer to the trembling young man. Go to Sparta, Paris, and she will fall head over heels in love with you. I swear. Without hesitation, the young man gave the golden apple to Aphrodite. Hera and Athena would not forget the insult Paris had never meant to offer them. And so it began. Every year King Priam held games in memory of the son he had condemned to die on the mountains. He would send a request to Achilles, the chief herdsman, to bring a magnificent bull to be given as a prize at the games. One fateful year, not knowing he was Priam's last son, Paris decided to follow the bull into the city. Achilles begged him not to go, but the youth was determined to compete in the games. He competed in boxing and won, and in the foot race won, beating the king's son Hector and Decius. They challenged him to a run again. Paris won his third laurel wreath. Hector and his brother, furious at being beaten by a common herdsman, threatened him with their swords. To save an unarmed Paris, Achilles confessed that he had not obeyed the king's order to kill the baby. So Paris was happily reunited with King Priam, his father, and made peace with his brothers. Now, a Trojan prince, Paris never forgot the promise Aphrodite made him on the mountain. One day he asked his father if he could lead the Trojan delegation to the Greek city of Sparta, where King Menelaus ruled with Helen, his wife. The god smiled and watched their mischief unfold. Paris found himself the honored guest of Menelaus in Sparta, a white-walled city and barren part of Greece. He was treated with great hospitality. He repaid it dishonorably. Helen was everything that Aphrodite had described when Paris awarded her the golden apple. Paris could not resist her. He gave Helen gifts, whispered honeyed words, drank from the goblet she had drunk from, and she was equally attracted to him and to this handsome young man. They walked together through the place, sat in the shaded courtyard, touched hands as if by accident, and gazed at each other. The court was alive with whispers and rumors. King Menelaus, a decent man, would not believe the gossip. He saw how Paris never left his wife's side, but thought it was only a young man's folly. He even left them together when he sailed to Crete for his grandfather's funeral. Helen must stay to entertain their Trojan guests. That same night, Helen shamelessly left Sparta with Paris and sailed for Troy. It was done, and what came next followed as night follows day. 1,000 ships sailed for Troy. All of Troy fell under Helen's beauty. Paris vowed she would never be returned to Menelaus. Only Hector, a brave and honorable prince, was wary of Helen and her dangerous beauty, as was his wife, Andromache, a wise and noble woman. Menelaus demanded that his brother, the High King Agamemnon, helped him retrieve his wife. Agamemnon agreed, as was his duty. So the Greeks came. They came from Cepheus and sacred Chrysia. Ajax brought 12 ships from Salamis and moored them in Ilias, where the Athenian army camped. Men came from Cyprus, the land of doves, and others were led by the son of Hercules. Still, the Greek ships came. Menelaus came from Sparta with 60 ships to fight under his brother Agamemnon. The High King brought the largest force from Corinth and Mycenae. And still they came. From Pylos and from Crete came men led by Endomeneus and the spearmen. From Halodike and Manetine and Ansius. High-prowed, bright-painted ships swooped across the waves, carrying the armed Greeks. Odysseus left the island of Ithaca, a place of pine forest and soft blue seas. With 12 crimson-proud ships, he left his faithful wife, Penelope, in the hopes of battle, loot, and glory. Warlike Diomedes came to prove his bravery. He brought 80 black-sailed ships from vine-covered Epidaurus. Nestor, though an old man, came to offer wise counsel with the crew of warriors eager for the clash of bronze on bronze. And the mighty hero Achilles came with 50 open ships, each carrying 50 warriors eager to fight. So they came, swan-proud open boats, crashing through the deep green seas over the sparkling dawn waves. They drove on until nightfall, and then sailed atop the lifting swell. They rode like carrion birds, swooping and swelling waters together, close to the black cliffs and foaming spray. The gods, sitting on Olympus, watched these ships gather like gulls over a school of silver fish. Zeus, father of the gods, Hera, his wife, Athena, the goddess of war, Poseidon, the earth shaker, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Eros, the troublemaker, looked down on the Greek armies and their favorite warriors. The fleet had gathered in a safe haven in Iliad to regroup before they reached Troy. There they saw an omen. They were making a sacrifice when suddenly a snake with blood-red markings as fast as a whip emerged from beneath an altar, heading straight for a plane tree. A brood of fledgling sparrows sat on its top branch. The mother fluttered nearby as the snake ate 9 little birds. The snake coiled up, struck again, and took the mother bird, eating her too. The warriors wanted to know what this meant, and Callichus spoke. The seer spoke. Zeus had sent a message. We will fight for Troy's high towers and her wide streets for 9 years, one for each of the fledglings. In the 10th year we will fight, and the streets, towers, and walls will be ours. In the bright morning they sailed for Troy and battle. The siege of Troy. 9 years had passed, yet the Greek raiders are still outside the walls of Troy. Some of the warriors are tired of the siege. Their boats warp, and the sails rot. But they will not abandon the siege while Helen stays with Paris behind the Trojan walls. They are those who say that these two have caused 100,000 deaths and led men to rot on the beach below the city walls. Now, foolishly, the high king Agamemnon has angered the god Apollo. It happened in this way. One morning, an old man hobbled down the beach from the direction of Troy. He passed between boats carrying a heavy load on his back. He found the Greeks seated around their high king. The old man walked through the ranks of soldiers with the help of his staff, which showed he was a priest of the god Apollo. He walked directly with dignity up to Agamemnon and laid down his heavy load at the high king's feet. There were gold plate armor, swords, bronze mirrors, and bronze and silvered shields. Agamemnon asked his name, and the old man looked him boldly in the eye. The high king knew him now. The old man's daughter, Chryseis, had been taken by Agamemnon when the Greeks had raided a village beyond Troy. She was part of the loot, and the Greeks took. It was normal. The old man spoke quietly. "You took my child for yourself," he said. It was true. And at the same time, a lovely young woman named Briseis was given to Achilles at this portion of the loot. The old man went on, "I have come to ransom my daughter." No one spoke, for the old man had moved them with his dignity. "My lords," he said, turning to the soldiers seated behind him, "you hope to take Troy and then sail home safely. Maybe the gods will grant you your wish, but not unless you show reverence to the archer god Apollo by accepting his ransom and releasing my daughter. I tell you, for I am his priest and know how powerful his anger can be." The men, admiring his courage, applauded him. They wanted Agamemnon to free the girl so they could go home with her father. She could go home with her father. But the high king, furious with his soldiers, angrily approached the old man. "You old fool, get away from our ships. You'll find your priest's staff no shield against my anger. I will not allow Chryseis, your daughter, to go. She is my property. Get away before I set the war dogs on you." The warriors were embarrassed at Agamemnon's rudeness to the dignified old man, but no one had the right to question the high king. The old man turned and hobbled away along the seashore. As he went, he prayed to Apollo, "If I ever make a sacrifice that pleased you, if I ever the goat or the bull I offered you delighted you, then grant me one wish. Let the Greeks pay for my tears with your arrows." And they did. Apollo was furious at the insult to his priest, and he came down on the Greeks like the darkest night. Mules and dogs died first, and then one after another men were hit by the gods' hissing arrows. Apollo rained down a plague on the camp.